Well, hey there, hobby homesteaders. Welcome back to Peaks Peak. If you're new to the channel, I'm Lucas, and we are sharing our hobbies on our 38 acres here in Eastern Kentucky. And today, we're installing a new product on our Kubota BX tractor, and it's going to make it a lot more useful. As you know, we've partnered with Artillian tractor to bring you several of their products, and I shared with you the other day their rock bucket, which I was just blown away by. It does a fantastic job of sifting through the soil and picking out the rocks and leaving a nice smooth yard so that we can get ready to plant grass seed. Well, I mentioned we have some things to add to that bucket. And the first thing that we're going to do is add the Artillian diverter system so that we can add hydraulics to the mix on this bucket. Now, the Artillian diverter system is a really cool setup. It comes with everything that you need to install on your tractor. Here's how a diverter system basically works. You have the hoses and the actuator to put onto your tractor, and it comes with this nice little button that mounts to your joystick. And what it does is it diverts the hydraulic fluid that would normally work your tilt functions of your bucket. So it would either dump it or raise it up. And when you push this button, those hydraulics are diverted to whatever you add as an extra attachment to your front end loader. So in terms of a grapple, you're going to pull this button, and then your joystick lever left and right are going to open and close the jaws of your grapple. It's just as easy as pushing a button, so you don't lose the function of your tilt and dump on your bucket. You just add the functions of closing the jaws and opening the jaws on the grapple. Now, the overall kit, honestly, it looks pretty simple. I mean, the wires are plug and play. Each of your hose systems come with labels on them, so they tell you what they're supposed to attach to. For instance, you've got to the curl and to the dump for this end of this hydraulic hose. Then the other end has an A1 and a B1. Well, your diverter valve has A1 and B1, and A2 and B2, which are for the other hoses that we have there. So it's all pretty straightforward, and it comes with a nice set of instructions that are color printed and step by step. Now, the instructions say that an experienced dealer, meaning somebody who installs these on a regular basis, can install this system in 2 hours. An average dealer technician in 4 hours, and a do-it-yourselfer like me, it says 6 hours. We're going to try to beat that. I'll let you know how I do. Really excited to get this thing up and running. Three-quarter inch wrench to crack these loose. I have a little collection of reusable monster size zip ties here, which will work great for keeping this under control until we're ready for those. Next, this is going to mount right about here. Okay, that's going to be good. I think those are going to be 7/16, yeah. And we're kind of just temporarily attaching this because it may move up or down once we get going. But the next step is to attach this gang of 2 hoses here that has the wiring harnesses for the solenoid. One has blue cap, red cap, and the other end has P1 and P2. So those are the connections we're going to be making here next. I'm going to, at this point, go ahead and reconnect this right here. So we have red cap and blue cap. And P2. And I'm trying not to remove the caps until I am ready to make my connection. That way we don't have any issues with getting dirt in anything. Alright, let's go ahead and snug those up. Okay. Now I want to do a test here. Disconnect. And that's the part that I've got to take care of there, is these have to work with me here. So knock these back loose, go over the top. So if I am sitting right here, P2, so if I tighten them like that, let's try that. And then if we take this loose to reconnect them. Okay, this is the next set of hoses that we're putting on, and it's the gang of 2 hoses with the front connections, and then you have A2 and B2 right here. So those are pretty simple to follow. Got how we're going to line that up. I do know that I often use this to slide stuff onto the loader and everything else, so I want to make sure that I've got my protective sleeve pulled down here. Protective sleeve right in there, so that will take care of that. And then we've got to make sure we can get to our connections so that we can disconnect when we need to. Okay, next, these are going to come over the top of the loader arm and connect back here. A2 and B2. So that's the bottom, A2, and the top, B2. In the instructions, next to every one of these where it says tighten the connections, it says do not over tighten. And that's one of the things that I am the worst at, is over tightening things. And that can cause you some problems. So we don't want to do that. Okay, next, we've got to figure out how to route these. Okay guys, this part right here might be the trickiest part, and it's not difficult, but this might be the trickiest part of the installation, because you have to trace your dump and curl lines to the hard lines here on the loader arm, because you're going to take these hoses off that previously went to your quick disconnect, and you're going to replace them with the last 2 hoses here that say A1 and B1 and 2 curl and 2 dump. Now, a quick tip I want to share is, because these hard lines are aluminum and easy to bend, you could easily kink them. So I've got an 11/16 inch wrench on the square part of the tube, and I have a 3/4 inch wrench on the fitting. And we're just going to crack that loose and hold the tube in place while we crack that loose. They're not that tight, and that tells you that when you put them back, you don't need to get crazy tight with it either. We're going to go ahead and connect our A1 and B1. So A1 is your bottom one here. Go ahead and snug these up. Actually, let's go ahead and leave those loose until we get them routed over where they need to go here. We're going over the top. Okay, routing those dump and curl hoses are definitely the most tricky part of this, and I'm not really sure why they also did not color code the instructions red and blue like they did through the rest of the instructions. Instead, they said dump and curl, follow the hard lines. Well, following the hard lines is difficult because they go up inside the loader arms, so that makes it a little bit difficult. But I do believe I have it hooked up correctly, and that is the dump is the red line and the curl is the blue line. And that's the way we went with it. Now, I've not tightened everything down yet, but I'm going to connect it, see if I have any leaks, and make sure that it functions the way that it should before we go any further. Well, let's go ahead and reconnect everything, make sure we can do it without pinching any hoses and all that. And then we've got to route some lines and Okay, so that part all works well. Now I've got kind of my mess of hoses here to finish taking care of. I think those are fine the way that they are. I want this slack brought up here a little bit. There we go. That covers the things that should be rubbing around. Then we probably want, I don't see any leaks on any of the hoses we just connected, so that's good. They give us lots of zip ties, so that's cool. I'm going to attach a few of those here. So definitely we had the right connections on our dump and curl functions. So that means that the one that says to dump is going to go to the red hard line on your loader, and the one that says to curl is going to go to the blue hard line on your loader there. That makes that a little bit more simple. That little blurb was not in the instructions. Next, we've got to make our electrical connections. So we are right at an hour in. So I've got an hour to make my electrical connections in order to be considered an experienced dealer technician. The race is on. I bet my buddy Will over at Davis Equipment had this installed in an hour. But I'm trying to figure out what hose is what, you know. I mean, give me a break. I'm gonna show you the next little trick that I'm gonna do, because I want my trigger right here on the front of the handle, and I wanted it to have something to lean against right here. So that puts it in kind of the perfect spot right there and makes it good and stable. So I put my zip ties around there, and now I'm just going to bury them in place here so that they won't spin around. And all right, now we'll be ready to install our switch right there, and that fits nice and snug. So let's get our zip ties. If you take your zip tie where it's bent over at the end and point it outward, then you can push it right through there without having to finagle it around. Up here and get a feel for it. Oh yeah, it's perfect right there. Just what I wanted. Now I will say, these are not your standard Harbor Freight zip ties. These suckers are tough. I like it. Now we gotta route our wire. Okay, now I am not going to claim the cleanest install that anyone has ever made on a diverter valve, but we finished in under 2 hours. In fact, it was about 1 hour and 50 minutes while shooting a video. So I share that not to brag, because it's no big deal. I share that to say this is a simple install anyone can do. You don't have to have knowledge of hydraulics or any of those things. Now, there are a few things I had to kind of look at for a few minutes and figure out, like the hoses that go to the dump and the curl, and, you know, make sure that I was hooking it up to the right ones. And, you know, you need a little bit of knowledge of electrical connections in order to make your final connections. Although I didn't opt for it, but they have a kit where you can get a plug that plugs into your cigarette lighter aux port in the little toolbox thing, and that way you don't have to do any wiring at all. So that's plug and play, in which case if you don't know how to do any kind of wiring or testing to figure out where to put your power wire, then you might go that route. But all in all, super simple install. I'm pumped to try this thing out, plug something into it and see how it works. No leaks or anything like that, so I know that part of it is okay. I haven't tested the power portion of it yet, but I do know that we have power to our switch, so everything is good there. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how we installed everything. That way, if you're making this install, then you can kind of look at how I routed it, and if you like that and it works for you, then you can go that route. Starting right up front here with our connections, you know, we're hooked right on the front of this loader pipe. We routed our hoses right through there, and they go up and over the top to the diverter valve. The other connections on the outside here go up and over the top and to your dump and curl hard lines on the side of the loader. And then your final connections, which are these two back in behind here, they go over the top or around the front because of the way I have these hoses twisted right now. They go over the top to your quick connect, and we're connected right there. Now, you have your electrical connections here, and these that are just looped on here, these are just plug covers, so that when you disconnect your loader, you can plug these on and keep the connections clean. To show you how I made my electrical connections, I put a ground wire right here, and then I ran my hot wire, which is fused, so you can hook it directly to power. I put a spade terminal on the end of it and plugged it in to this work light fuse on the inside of this box. Now, I did notch the cover on my case just a little bit so that the wire wouldn't be pinched in the cover, but it could run in there and make the connection and work just fine there. Our button we put on the front of here, and like I showed you, we put zip ties around there and taped it to give this a good firm base for that to connect to. Zip tied that, ran the cord right down through the little boot right here, and I kept it inside of this shield back in here. You can see the wire comes down, and I zip tied it to that hard line right there, and we go in and under this tray here. So we're coming in the back side here, pay no attention to the dirt, and I kept the wires all on top of the hard lines here, and they'll kind of help to protect it. We put zip ties along there. Now you have a nice length of cord that is extra right here. I bundled it up, put a zip tie around it, and then zip tied it again to the hard lines so that it would stay up above my hard lines there. We'll turn those up just a little bit, and that way they're tucked away above the hard lines there where they won't be grabbing branches and stuff. Another zip tie up here until we come out up in this top corner away from all the moving parts. And that top corner, very conveniently, comes out right here next to your quick connect. So you have a space, a hole right here on the quick connect housing where you can zip tie your wire to the back of it, and then the power wire can go right inside to the fuse panel. And that's it. And now we have hydraulics on the front of our tractor. The next step is to put a grapple on this bucket. And then we're going to do a separate video on the actual grapple functions and showing it in action. One more thing I might add is that I have a couple of drops of hydraulic fluid on the floor from where I didn't do a good job of keeping the hoses wrapped up while I had things unhooked and all of that. But this is a quality kit because all of the connections that I made, none of those connections leak. Everything works as it should. There's going to be a few things I'm going to have to get used to, like when I take my loader off, disconnecting, taking the quick connect off and unhooking the electrical connection will be a new step for me. And I think I have everything routed to where it's easy to disconnect that and still set it up here on the loader, and all of that should work just fine. But it will be new for me, so I'll have to get used to that. But I think it's going to be worth getting used to for the use of this grapple. Stay tuned. We're going to have a video where we get out in the woods, we move some brush, and we put that thing to work. We're also going to test it on moving logs because this is a rock bucket. So we have a little bit of weight here, probably a little bit more weight than just a standard grapple. I kind of want to see what kind of logs I'll be able to pick up and move around with just this setup here. If I can recover logs from the woods and put them on the pile without dragging them in the dirt, that's going to help me a lot. Now, I can stage them on some small logs or boards or whatever to where I can get forks under them. I can still use my bucket forks if I need to place them on the mill. And I may want to simply because I can put the forks right between the bunks and set them down on the mill that way. But this is going to help me move logs out of the woods without filling them up with dirt. Lots of great benefits to this, and I can't wait to put it to use. I've wanted one for years, and I'm so glad to be working with Artillian so that I can show this off. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Listen, until next time, don't forget to get outside and enjoy God's creation. It's beautiful out there. Y'all have a good day.